A over IP, that well-termed phrase that no one really has any particular affiliation to, but we're always being told it's taking off and so on. If we're trying to approach the whole concept from the end user's perspective, are there any points of advice I think you could actually point out, 4 or 5 points, to someone looking at A over IP without being completely buried by all the degrees of information that's coming our way, that can simplify it slightly for people so they understand what the nub is, its importance, and where we're going with it?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm not sure whether I can give you 4 or 5 points, but I'll try and give you my best answer. So yeah, I mean, AV over IP, there are a whole range of technologies out there that the customer base is getting offered. And for me, the customers need to think about what problem they're trying to solve, what their application is. You know, I guess if you're somebody that's you're a surgeon, you're trying to use this for hand-to-eye coordination stuff, then absolutely you're going to want the lowest latency offer that you can have, and obviously very high quality as well. What you're doing is a critical function. But for many people, the content they're streaming is not that time critical, and therefore other technologies, maybe based around broadcast codecs, are going to be far more applicable. So you know, the customers, the users of the technology need to think carefully about their use case and select the appropriate technology. You know, they have to think about their networks. Some of the less compressed technologies absolutely demand quite a sophisticated networking capability with high speeds of 10 gigabits getting to all corners of your network. You may not have that. You may need to consider rewiring. That might not be a cost that you're prepared to bear in order to achieve your goals. Again, some of the more compressed technologies certainly will pervade all 4 corners of your network. You don't really need to think too hard about whether you can get the content that you want from source to any one of a number of destinations. The less compressed technologies running at maybe 1 gig, 10 gigabits a second, you are going to have to think quite carefully about your network topology and the performance of your network to make sure it works under all circumstances.
There seem to be 2 worlds in this, don't there? There's the world of IT which depends and demands interoperability and high security standards, and the world of IV, which is probably more video and transmission focused, and now we're dealing with large data volumes.
Yes.
Are we approaching a point where we just run some stuff on the network and leave it off for other non-critical areas? Are we going to have to compromise in some way when it comes and just have to accept that AV over IP is only good element of functionality for certain types of application? If you've got others, better stay clear of it.
Good question. So I guess the first thing, the interoperability you raised, for me this is a big issue. There are a number of competing technologies. They're obviously all capable of delivering audio and video from point A to point B, but clearly a number of them just do not interoperate with each other. So effectively you've got groups of companies that have decided to embrace one technology or the other, and in essence they're separated from each other. It's another reason why the customers need to think quite carefully about which AV over IP technology they're going to use, because at the end of the day you'll only have a selected choice of vendors depending upon which technology you feel answers your problems or your challenges you're trying to face up to. As for it kind of being slightly isolated or specialist, well again, it's quite clear there's been audio and video streamed over IP networks for many years now. This is not a new thing. Some of these technologies happily coexist on the same network as all the other services you would run, be that voice over IP, your usual IT or data traffic that you're transmitting. But again, some of the more or the less compressed technologies, I think do provide challenges for you in terms of mixing that audio and video transmission over your IT network.
The question I'm sort of leading up to is, can any AV device and application be networked? Or is that a sort of far-sighted utopia? Can we ask such a simple, basic question?
I think the answer to that question is actually yes. I mean, that gets down to, is IP and our IT networks and questions suitable for the carrying of audio and video? And I think the short answer to that question is yes. As a company, we've been streaming audio and video over IP networks for 18 years. And I think most of the technologies that are available to a customer, yes, IP is absolutely the right medium for them. But you do need to think about the network topology, the bit rates that you're expected to transport of that network, and the other things you're going to try and mix with that technology on your network. These things will collaborate with each other. You can have data and video and audio mixed on the same network, but you certainly have to think carefully about the technology you've chosen and how you implement it on your network.
Can you piggyback IP with Ethernet networks quite sensibly? Can you mix and match networking topologies and technologies to accommodate? Are we going to end up with a mixture of networking type of technologies to accommodate almost like a patchwork quilt of stuff that links together, but you're away from the mission critical stuff, but you can optimize one element of a networking environment for a particular use you need to put through it, like video for example, and leave the rest another sort of benign element that is just merely transactional, or just linking up a printer or a projector, or just managing an estate of AV equipment on another element of the network. And are we going to see the network split up into different areas that obviously separate what the IT department call the mission critical from the AV functional, if you like? Are we going to see something like that, or are we happy with one environment?
I'm not sure there's a single answer to that question. Again, looking at the spectrum of technologies, the fact that some of these technologies are relatively highly compressed and therefore the data rates are quite low, you will find these deployed in many networks where they're absolutely intermingled with the data, voice, and as you described, mission critical IP traffic. That's an established model that works well. I think where you're carrying much higher bitrate traffic, there's much more of a tendency, I guess, to consider having these segregated. So you've got a dedicated AV LAN if you want, and then you have other elements of it which are separate for other purposes. So I think in some circumstances it is down to I guess the IT manager and whether he perceives a certain amount of risk or actually wants to have them physically separated. But no, the short answer is that a lot of these technologies will mix quite successfully. But you, again, at the risk of repeating myself, you do have to think carefully about the bit rates of the technology you've chosen and whether that leaves enough bandwidth for you to carry on your mission critical activities mixed on the same network or not. So certainly I think the much lower latency, much higher bandwidth technologies that are available from the AV over IP in the market would tend to lend themselves to a dedicated network. As I say, there are technologies that tend to be more highly compressed, which will happily mix with the IT infrastructure on any corporate venue or hospitality network.
Are we going to see more of a sort of almost like a consultancy services from the integrators who could actually take this away from you and start to assess what your estate needs and start to work out where the balances and everything else will be within an integration project and start to provide more consultancy that way to make this work?
Well, I think that's very important. I mean, your integrator should be there to help the customer understand his application space, the problem he's trying to solve, and help guide them in selecting the right technology for the job. You know, if the customer simply wants to use broadcast content, then really there's a certain class of technology that's just natural for that, and as I say, the network constraints for that are very limited. On the other hand, if he does want to use a lightly compressed technology running at 9 gigabits a second, for example, then the consultant's going to have to think quite hard and work quite closely with the IT team to say, what is your network like? You know, where are the 10 gig switches that are going to support this traffic? Do you have them everywhere you need to? Is there parts of the network that are not going to be capable of carrying that, and therefore you need to keep that segregated? So yeah, I think it's going to be crucial that the integrator understands the benefits and as well as some of the complexities involved in the different technology choices, and help guide the customers to make the right choice of the right technology for the solution. There's no point in somebody using 9 gigabits a second if all they want to do is carry some content that was previously compressed by a broadcaster. That's pointless. But it's got a point if you're trying to maybe get some live action from somebody's stomach to the surgeon in real time. Clearly you're going to absolutely make sure your network's capable of supporting that.